All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming to our session. We have a really exciting conversation with Eric and Jamie here talking about why is laser scanning important for media production. It's very important, by the way, if you didn't know. So,
Extremely important.
extremely important. We're going to start off with a few intros. So, Eric, go ahead and introduce yourself first.
Sure, my name is Eric Geisler. I'm the Chief Technical Officer at Global Objects. Our company makes digital twins and we scan objects and environments in the real world. And our market differentiator is that everything that we create, all the 3D data that we create is based on something that's real.
And Jamie?
I'm Jamie. I am an account manager on Leica Geosystems M&E team based in Los Angeles. And we provide the hardware and software that guys like Eric use to capture this data on set while scouting locations and hopefully use that data to help influence all phases of the production life cycle. So we're really excited to be here and help enable creatives do some really neat stuff with laser technology.
Great. And I'm Corinne. I'm the marketing manager for Leica. I come from film technology at companies like The Skies and Netflix, and now I'm here working with the LiDAR team at Leica Geosystems. All right, so we're going to kick off with a bit of an intro on what is LiDAR, continue to some of the use cases, go into the creative process that Global Objects uses, and then talk about the future of laser scanning. What's next, what's new, what's coming up. A lot of really cool stuff. And then at the end, Q&A for everyone. So, Jamie, why don't you give us a quick intro on what Leica Geosystems is doing?
Sure, yeah, so just real quick, LiDAR stands for light detection and ranging. It's a type of laser measurement system. The idea is that you take a device, it spits out lasers all over the environment. We use that to generate what we call a point cloud, and that can be used to recreate 3D twins of the room or outdoor landscape you're in. That can be used for artists down the production line. So Leica's been doing this for a long time, usually in industrial engineering, land surveying, those areas. But we've recently identified a strong need for this in the production realm, and we found ways that this sort of data could be very useful for all teams involved in film projects. So we're really excited to sort of jump into this landscape. We have a lot of different solutions for different types of data capture needs. So whether you're outdoors, you're capturing a large environment, or maybe you're inside and you need to capture more minute details, set planning, find power access locations, whatever the need may be, there's just a lot of different ways to use the technology. So it's really only limited by how creative you can be with the tools you have.
Yeah, plus it's lasers. Lasers are cool, guys. Playing with lasers is like every boy wants to play with a laser.
Yeah.
And these tools are incredibly precise too. The lasers do, so like a normal camera will take a picture, using photons. Well, they're using photons with lasers to measure very precise points. And most of these precision is up to like 4 to 5 million points per second that's getting captured and brought back to the camera. So very precise laser measurement.
Up to 1.9 millimeters if you want a number, actually. So, if you're trying to reference something in the real world versus the digital recreation of it, you can be pretty confident that you're getting the right dimensions to work with.
Yeah. So what's Global Objects doing in this world? How are they using that data?
Well, I mean, we need a tool set to capture environments, and these tools are what we use to, it's the base of our toolkit for capture. The thing is we need to be able to go into a large-scale environment and capture all of the detail at hypercritical precision, and so that's what we use it for.
All right, Jamie, well, we gave a quick intro. What else is important about LiDAR scanning? Tell us a little bit about it.
Sure, so I guess there's a lot of important things about LiDAR, right? I guess it depends on which team you're on and what your immediate needs are. If you're talking about a film production workflow, there are applications for the technology from pre-production, on the day, on location, and all through post. So the idea is you capture that point cloud I described where you get your sort of 3D representation of the environment you need. And the typical workflow we see, there's different ways you could do it, but the typical workflow we see is you would take that point cloud into your software, you'd clean up the data however you need to, and then you can sort of use color and texture data to map on top of that and create what we call a mesh, which you can then output as, say, an OBJ file, for example, and send down to your artists who are using Blender, Unreal, Unity, whatever engine you prefer. So that if you have a lot of different teams working on a project, maybe you're in a situation where you need to collaborate with another visual effects house on a film, for example, you can share that data and make sure everyone's speaking the same language regardless of the system they're on. And to Eric's point earlier about accuracy, if you are trying to recreate something like for like, you do want to get that to the millimeter level, especially when it comes to things
Sub-millimeter.
Sub-millimeter level, yeah. Especially when it comes to things like, for example, props, right? So I've seen situations where maybe there's a combat element, like a weapon or something, and you can't be stabbing your actors on set, right? Not in real life. So you do a prop, you scan the sword or whatever the weapon is, and then you can recreate that digitally and be confident that the dimensions are going to match up to what you had in your plate.
Yeah, so I think another part of accuracy is this. It's when you're doing really heavy visual effects downstream and down the line, you end up invariably needing to get as accurate data as possible because things like camera solving and camera tracking become hypercritical. Lens data, all that becomes hypercritical, and the accuracy of the data makes for the solves to actually occur downstream. So when you're in a VFX pipeline and you have a car that's driving and you need to replace something on that car. Well, if you have a solve of that, if you have a 3D scan of the car and you need to make a solve of that car, you know that that data of the car is accurate. So downstream in the pipeline, you know that you're working with something that is going to work downstream. And that's just really important.
And that's just in the pre-production and planning phase, right? I mean, there's also other ways. For example, if you're on location and maybe your set design team wants to archive what you have set up, maybe you need to tear it down and rebuild the next morning, you can just quickly get a scanner in there and get the information and be confident that your props are where they need to be and your set pieces are all squared away. And moving from the shoot down through post-production, everyone's going to be using that same information, that same spatial data. So if you have artists who, let's say, are working on match move elements, or your lighting team wants to do some light sims and know what sort of surfaces that they're going to work with, you have the geometry, you have the angles, you have all the measurements down, and these lasers can even pick up on things like reflectivity of different surfaces. So like I was just talking about light planning, you can sort of take that into whatever algorithm you have and use that data to simulate the lighting effects and get that to match whatever real world plates that you have to be comping those elements into. Yeah,
it's not just for VFX. I mean, look, filmmaking is you're putting together a set, a prop, an actor in a costume, in a makeup, and that is only available for a short space of time, and then it's gone forever. And you're spending millions of dollars to do that, right? So my pitch, at least to the studios, is like, let's scan everything that you're doing so that you have it downstream with AI models and with other things. There's so many use cases. It's for pre-production, if you need to go and look around and place lights and things in set. If you want to look at a camera angle with your DP, if you want to look at a camera angle with your director, there's so many use cases downstream. Why not scan? Because you're essentially spending millions of dollars to put something in front of a camera, capture it in 3D. 3D is where it's at.
It's a time saver at the end of the day, right? It's, to Eric's point, you've got one shot to do a lot of this stuff, and you have a lot of people and a lot of money on the line, so you don't want to take risks when it comes to that. And so taking a scan, it's not a very long process. I mean, it takes a few minutes to get a scan that gives you millions of points of data. That's very practical, so it just makes sense to do it. If as a safety net, if nothing else, but also it enables you to be a little more creative and exploratory in how you use the point cloud data with artists down the line in production.
Yeah, just the order of magnitude. So like when we go to scan a set, we're scanning typically on break. So the crew will break for lunch, we'll move in, and in the span of 20 to 30 minutes, an entire set will be captured from multiple dimension points, and we're able to completely recreate that set downstream. And so 20 minutes while the crew's at lunch, and now you have a 100% digital twin accurate recreation of your set.
And there's no one waiting on you to finish up your scanning and get off the set.
Yeah, because we understand production, right? Production moves fast. It's fast and furious. VFX and post is slow and tedious, right? Those two worlds really don't match. So it's really good to capture this data while you're there on set so that you can then have it for the slow and tedious parts of production.
Cool. So let's jump into some of the use cases and get a little more specific about how it's used and what are the different purposes for it. So Jamie, go ahead, jump in.
Sure, yeah. I mean, we touched on a few of these already, but like I mentioned, it's got different applications from pre-shoot to post-production. And I think in terms of pre-production, set planning, pre-visualization, tech viz, these are things that have been very heavily used in the industry for the past few years. But I feel personally, I've been seeing people lean more and more into these workflows, and so it's almost becoming a standardized part of that. You wouldn't do previs of a real-world location ideally unless you had an understanding of the buildings and the streets and the lighting environment you're working with. And so the LiDAR sort of lets you set up that foundation that you can work off confidently for the rest of that pre-planning process. On location, we mentioned archiving, but also set design and set extension. So you might want to scan a location beforehand and then bring that to your construction crew the morning of the shoot, let's say. So it's the same data set. It has multiple applications through the different steps of the production life cycle. But the important thing, and I can't stress this enough, is it can be used in different ways. And it's really just about what you're looking to gain. If I need to know a precise measurement for my rigging team, I can do that. Or if I just need to sort of get a quick reference point to send to a producer real quick, you can sort of throw data up to the cloud. You do a quick auto mesh. We have a software that just does an auto mesh on top of the point cloud, so it'll give you a representation of what you're looking at fast. And you can get quick yes and no answers as far as I want to have an access point here. Maybe I don't like this location so much, let's find somewhere that's a little more open, whatever the case might be. And the beauty about the LiDAR is it works in different lighting conditions too, right? So if you do need to scan a dark room like this, for example, or a cave or some more exotic environment, you don't need to be worried about, is my laser capturing that data with the lighting conditions? Because
it is a laser.
It's a laser.
So it'll shoot anywhere, anyhow.
It's
Except for
physics.
Underwater, it's a little murky. But
It's physics. The laser's going to go where the laser's going to go, and it's going to give you the geometry that you need to render out a model that's useful to you.
Yeah, so for our kids, it was interesting. We got contacted by Fox. There was a production they were working on about the Boston Tea Party, and they had a host, Rob Lowe, and he couldn't travel because he was booked on another show he was doing for Netflix. So they needed to shoot him in Boston at a place called Mystic Seaport, but they needed it to be in Los Angeles. So this is the perfect case for laser scanning. So they hired us. We went out. We scanned the entirety of the seaport. It did rain on the day we were scanning, so we scanned in the rain and we were able to recover the data. But then we brought that data inside of Unreal Engine and we built out a full level based on the data that we captured at the seaport. And we brought that to a virtual production stage here in Los Angeles, and then Rob came and shot here in Los Angeles. So it was a cost-benefit savings for production, because even if they could have gotten Rob to go, his quote per day, I think it's like $1 million a day, it was easier just to send us as a small crew to go capture, bring the data back, and put it up on a set. So that's a perfect real-world example of how something like this could be used.
And you captured all that in what, like a day or two?
Yeah, well, we originally had 3 days, but we got rained out. So we had to capture an entire seaport in basically 1 day.
And you did it.
And we did.
How many scans was that?
144. We had 2 scanners going simultaneously, and then we did some aerial scans as well with drones.
That's awesome. So tell me more about how you can use this for virtual production, because everyone's here on a VP stage. We're in this environment. How can you apply that to this wall?
Yeah, so I mean, once the data comes back, interestingly enough, you can bring point cloud data directly into Unreal Engine. So that's what we did originally. Before we did any cleanup or anything, we brought the point cloud data directly inside of Unreal, and then we did a tech viz of that to figure out where we wanted to look, what parts of because it's an entire seaport. It was like half a mile of old colonial houses and ships and clipper ships and stuff. So we tech vizzed it first as a point cloud. And then once we were sort of happy with the areas that we wanted, we went back and we got the sub-millimeter data, and we meshed that. And then we took those meshes, cleaned them up, and then brought them into the engine and used nanite and other tools to visualize them in real time. And so we built like a day version of it, a night version of it. We were able to sort of adjust the lighting for the DP. Our DP is actually here today. He's going to do a demo. And it was a fantastic experience because we got Rob out 3 hours early, and we had a really full day. So he was like, I've never done this before. This is incredible. You need to do this for everything that we do. He was able to come in, shoot we did 12 setups, so 12 different setups, 12 different lighting looks, all in the span of about 6 hours, all on a virtual production stage.
That's so cool. Awesome. So, Eric, you come from the VFX background. I'd love to hear how you use this for VFX. That's really cool, too.
It is, yeah. VFX, I mean, I think a lot of people in this world come from a VFX background. And the thing with VFX is that, you always have to learn all of the other trades because you're always having to solve problems in every single, like lighting issues, and you want things to look real, so you need to understand how to be a cinematographer. You need to understand how to direct talent. There's so many things you need to understand. So you end up invariably falling into the category of data capture, scanning, all of this stuff sort of having a VFX background makes it so that it makes sense, right? Especially for virtual production. The thing is that we've been using, up until today, you guys saw like real-time ray tracing on the wall. We've been using game engines, right? So just because it's a game engine doesn't mean you have to be a game person, right? Or in the gaming industry. We're rendering, and so we're rendering things from camera perspectives. And that's what we've been doing in VFX for years. So it comes in handy having a visual effects background for sure.
How about like set extensions, or like what are the different use cases within VFX? I know set extension is huge, match moving is really big. What else?
Yeah, I'll tell you. So we went out to a production in England. I just have to be careful about what I'm saying. Okay, and we were scanning some cars that are going to be recreated for a production. So that's like a use case. There's set extension is a great use case. So if you have a scene where you have you need to extend up or over. There's a lot of use cases where that you can basically take the scan data, repurpose it. Like I know we had done a shot where they basically needed a bunch of different kind of houses, sort of like in a perspective vantage point, and we had scanned like a library of things around a certain area, and we're able to repurpose that stuff inside of Unreal Engine and duplicate it down the road. So there's a lot of different ways you can take this data, and then eventually, and some of the things that we're doing is we're building a library of this information so that it's ready to go. The toughest thing about virtual production right now is the heavy lift to get something that looks really good up onto the wall, right? And so that's where I think there's been a lot of growing pains in companies that are now understanding, okay, so we really do have to, figure out and give the pre-production time to build the assets that are ready for the wall instead of thinking that you could just download something from the Unreal Asset Store and just get it up on the wall and get it running. I mean, every producer, that's their answer to everything. It's like, oh yeah, it's $10 on the Unreal Store, and then you get to a really expensive stage like this, you put those assets up and then they don't run at frame rate, and there's all these other problems downstream. So I think having a good high quality assets that run in real time, that were made from real world data, that's the mission statement of the company that I'm the CTO for.
I'm so glad you mentioned the asset thing too, because I'm seeing more and more people who are starting to explore the concept of creating their own asset libraries, both for internal projects and for, business purposes.
Digital backlots. All the studios want to build robust digital backlots.
Everyone's talking about it now. And the importance of having assets that you can rely on, regardless of the game engine you're using, it's critical. And so using, LiDAR scanners like the ones we have, and, our devices, for example, there are also little HDR cameras implanted in the device. So the idea would be you'd use those cameras during the scan to capture color and texture data for the environment around you. And it'll map those RGB values to the point itself. So if you are in a VP stage and, maybe there's some confusion, you're using the Macbeth chart and you're looking between the human eye and what the camera's capturing, you can sort of reference that data and bring that to your DP on set to sort of help make sense of the colors you're looking at on the wall versus what the camera sees.
Cool. And Jamie, I'm curious a bit about pre-production. How do you use this to get ready for a shoot as well, like location scouting, or for instance, like set building? How can this be used?
Yeah, I mean, location scouting's big. You take a scanner out into the field, you create a model, and like I mentioned earlier, you can sort of just throw it up on the cloud and get quick yeses or nos from producers when you need them. But it also helps inform the environments that you're going to build. So if you are doing previs and you want to do some camera tracking work, for example, you can take your virtual camera into the point cloud itself and maneuver it around the environment. So you can get quick POVs of what you're trying to capture on location when the time comes. And so you can send that information through your director and your DP and your artist as well, right? So when you are planning shots, everyone's looking at the same map, and no one's really confused about, is this wall supposed to be 10 feet tall? What's the speed the camera's moving at?
Yeah, because you can actually measure it precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it just takes the guesswork out, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And then, in other ways for pre-planning and location scouting, I think you touched on it earlier. You got rained out one day, or whatever the case may be.
Mother Nature happens.
Mother Nature happens, and so it just sort of helps you eliminate that variable. And if you are in a time crunch, because time is money, you can still capture the information you need without having to worry about rescheduling. So that is a big benefit to me.
Yeah, I think another benefit has to do with sustainability, because if you can get really accurate, we're in a visual medium. Filmmaking's a visual medium. Everybody needs to see it, right? And I think some of the themes that we're seeing here is like the DP was talking about, I could see it in the camera. You want to see it. You don't want to trust that it's going to be okay later on. So, but it's hard to transport. You're going to go do a crew scout. You got to transport all the people, fly them all in, all this stuff. So what's cool about this is that you can all actually, do it electronically now. You can sit down and really get a sense of the space of an environment where a tree is located next to a hill. You can set, some camera parameters. You can do a lot of things that would normally take you a plane flight and a car trip, and a lot of things you can do now, over Zoom even. So there's a sustainability aspect to it where the lift on your pre-production side is a lot less because you have accurate data to work with. And there's an old adage, garbage in, garbage out. It's really true. The accuracy of the data is important. The reason why we're using the Leica tools is because they're hyper accurate. They're made for engineering and construction, right? So they have to meet rigorous standards. And because of that, the data is really clean and it's really accurate. And because of that, you end up downstream with so many benefits. I mean, everybody's got a LiDAR scanner in their pocket. Your iPhone has a very rudimentary LiDAR scanner on it. And it'll even that can give you an idea of spatial awareness, right? But when you start to put hyper accurate cameras into a place, you can now start planning your shoots. You can plan where you're parking. You can plan where your generator is going to go. Where all the things that it would really take a scout to do. So the footprint on it is a lot less, and you can do all that stuff electronically.
So I have one more example here that your team took, Eric. You want to walk us through it?
Yeah, so this is an environment of a gym that we scanned. So we went to, it's actually here in Los Angeles. They shoot like a lot of Nike ads there. So we did a scan of a gym, and we were able to bring the data back and bring it into Unreal Engine, clean it up into geometry, use the data that we shot there for the texture data, and create a level. And so those are the types of environments that we're creating as part of our ready-to-go package of scenes.
Cool. And you touched a bit about workflows now. So what's the creative process and what's the workflow that goes behind making this scan into something that's usable?
Yeah, so typically we'll go on set and we will, or wherever the location is that we're scanning, and that's our capture day. And capture is actually super fast. We'll go there, we'll plan it out, we'll figure out where our positions and points are going to be. If you look over here, every one of those red dots is a position that we went and took a scan, right? And you get hyper accurate data. And then once we've got all of the data, we look around it, and you can see this stuff in real time while you're capturing, so you have an idea that you know the data is good, right? So you make sure your coverage is good. You're trying to cover as much as you can so that you've got every angle that you possibly need. Then you take that into other tool sets and you start to make that into polygons. And when you do that, the polygons are incredibly dense and incredibly detailed, but that comes at a cost, right? So So detail means you're spending a lot of polygons to show that detail. And we're talking about billions of polygons and points, not even millions anymore. We're in the billions and in some cases trillions of polygons. And so you need to sort of distill those down to something that'll run in real time. And much like the process of filmmaking, where you start with lots of footage, and then you go into editorial and you're cutting it down, and then you go and you get just the high-res footage that you want of just the thing that you want. You're kind of doing the same thing here with 3D data. And you're distilling it down, and then you master it into something that'll work in a real-time environment or something that you can play in real time. And so that process is sort of the workflow. You start with a large data set, you end up getting just the bits and pieces that you want, and then you squeeze that all down into a real-time application.
Cool. So let's say you have a laser scanner. What's next? Like, what's needed to make a production happen besides the scanner?
Okay, so you need a laser scanner. You need to get high-resolution photography also, like you would do in photogrammetry. And then what we do is we marry those things together. So we take photogrammetry and laser scans, and we put them together. Laser scan's really good at capturing points. Photogrammetry is really good at capturing texture data, and you want to blend those together. And so we blend those together in reality capture, right? And then we end up with a data set, and we then take that data set and clean it. So we make it. And when you're cleaning it, you're just editing things to make sure that there are areas that you want to make sure are flat or have a certain amount of detail or something else. You clean that data up, and then you segment it. So in segmentation, prior to creating geometry, you actually use AI tools that segment it. And one of Leica Geosystems' software packages called 3DR will actually look and go, oh, this is a tree, oh, this is the ground, oh, this is a fire hydrant, this is a bush, this is a power line. They've got a pretty cool machine learning algorithm that has seen a lot of this data and knows what things are. So it takes those points and actually segments them in 3D space for you. Then you mesh that data, and then you start to bring it through the workflow that we talked about.
All right, anything else about workflow? If not, we can go into the future of laser scanning.
Ooh, the future.
The future. The future is now, guys. All right. What do you guys think? What is the future of laser scanning?
So the future's bright for laser scanning because, we're using it for all kinds of different interesting things. So I think you have an example of a Gaussian splat. So the Gaussian splats are all the rage. Well, it just turns out that Gaussian splats are really good with laser scanners. So this is a scene that we put into Unreal Engine. It's a Gaussian splat that we took with a Leica laser scanner and photogrammetry. We then took the point data and downsampled it and meshed it together with the photography data and then trained a splat. And what you get is you get a really accurate splat. Most splats are structure from motion, so you'll have a camera from multiple points of view, and it'll use trigonometry to go, I see this dot in this picture, and I see this dot in that picture, and it'll figure out, using trig, exactly where that point is in space, right? There's a lot of error in that. So when you're using a laser scan, as it turns out, for the basis of your Gaussian splat, you can get a far more accurate Gaussian splat, and then when you train it on the images that you feed it, you end up with something that is not only accurate, but also looks fantastic. And so that, I think the future of laser scanning is most definitely a Gaussian splat as one of the outputs. And we're heavily invested in that right now.
And that's what I was talking about earlier in terms of how creative you can be with the technology, right? I mean, Gaussian splats, very hot right now, very in. And that's just one way where you can sort of take a new technology and marry it to LiDAR data that's grounded in reality.
But to be clear, a splat is just an output of a data set, right? The data set can be a splat, it can be polygons, it can be point clouds, right? All of that is, you still have to have a data set to have those things, right? So that's where we start with the data set.
All right, and we have one more cool example, also from Global Objects.
Yeah, so this is another thing. So this is a diner set that we created, and we're actually using Gen AI so we're using the data set to drive Gen AI. And what's cool about it is now these point clouds and these data sets can drive creatives. So they can go, oh, I want a diner. Great, now I want a diner to be a little bit different. Let's move the camera around, and maybe I want it to be steampunk or gothic, right? So instead of trying to come up with a lot of prompts to describe your camera angle and your camera position, you can now use the data set to drive Gen AI. And that's really going to be the future of Gen AI, is having real 3D data to drive it. The problem with AI right now is that it's only been trained on one eyeball, right? We have two eyeballs. We see in 3D. So it's been trained on the internet and things that it's scraped in images and movies. It really needs to understand the 3D world and how things are shaped and how they're lit, right? So when you start to use the 3D data to actually give generative AI, that's your prompt, not words. You give it a data set. It opens up the possibilities, really.
Yeah, in very exciting ways. And I think, like you said, you need to have a data set to sort of be grounded and serve as a foundation for these sorts of things. I think when people hear Gen AI, there's all sorts of reactions. Sometimes people get all up in arms about it and scared of it, right? Sometimes people really lean in and say, oh yeah, it's the future, it's all I need in my production. And I think the reality is that it's never going to fully replace what people on a production crew do.
I saw this funny meme. It was three people's reaction to Gen AI. One was a producer. He's like, oh yeah. The other one was an artist. He's like, oh no. Really, honestly, the dirty secret about Gen AI is we've been using AI and VFX over 2 decades, if not more, right?
Not new. It's
right.
not that new.
It's not really new. It's a tool enhancement. It's a power up. It's like Iron Man's suit. You know, it can't do everything by itself. It needs a creative to sort of drive it.
Yeah, the idea with Gen AI is to make people's lives easier, not to replace them. And so using a LiDAR point cloud or mesh or whatever sort of output you choose to reference for the AI model that you're working with, it's just a good way to sort of keep everyone on the same page and just keep it grounded in reality and let people know that yes, this is an exciting new technology, but it's still a tool at the end of the day, and tools have rules, and that's what the LiDAR is sort of here to help you set and help you define, is what sort of rules are you laying down for your algorithm to work with.
Okay, I think we're ready for questions.
All right, let's go into questions, guys. So does anyone in the audience have questions? I see a few hands up.
I'm coming.
Thank you, Jess.
I was wondering, if, Jamie, if you could talk about the exact models of the Leica products. Is it the RTC 360? Is that the flagship model? If you could talk a little bit more detailed
Yes,
about.
let me sell you stuff.
Yep, that's why we want to hear it. We're ready.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean,
Jamie, if I could just jump in for a second. I actually joke and tell people that I don't own a Porsche, but I do own 2 RTC 360s.
Yes, that's correct. And I would rather own 2 RTC 360s than a Porsche, personally.
Yeah, I appreciate the love. Yeah, so basically, yeah, clap it up, go for it. There are different applications, for the different LiDAR scanners. So it really depends on what your needs are. So the RTC 360, like you mentioned, for our team personally, the M&E team in Los Angeles, that's sort of our flagship model. That's the Porsche, I guess. So I mean, that's highly accurate, long range. I mean, up to 135 meters, and it gives you a super dense point cloud. So that's sort of the premier I need an exact digital twin go-to model.
And that was the device that we used 2 of to scan that entire seaport in a day.
Yeah. So there's that. Another line that we have is the BLK line, and that has a couple different models, which, again, depending on what your needs are, may be appropriate for you. So the BLK 360, that works in a similar way to the RTC in terms of the technology itself, except it's about the size of a can of Coke.
It's really discreet. The thing with the RTC is, unless you're wearing a vest and a hard hat, then you sort of blend into the world. People are going to know you're there doing something. The cool thing about the BLK, it's like the James Bond version of the RTC.
Slick.
It's slick.
Comes in black. And so we've had situations with that because it's so small and it happens to be a little quieter than the RTC. So we've had situations where we're working with a studio on a project and we need to have someone come in with the RTC at like 3 in the morning, once all the set designers gave their final okay for the day, but before the rest of the crew shows up, right? So they'll come, they'll do a scan for an hour or so, but then maybe they need to capture some more data in between takes when everyone is in a rush and there's bodies running around all over the place. So you might take a BLK 360, set it down for a minute and a half, do a quick scan, and then get it out before the next shot starts. So that's a smaller, quicker example of this type of technology that RTC has, just sort of distilled down into a more practical model for location purposes, or when you're on location, excuse me. We have another one called the BLK to go, part of that same line. So that's a handheld scanner and slightly different technology, but it's a similar output in that you're getting a point cloud that you can then use to create a mesh. That's a really good one for, again, if time is a factor. I mean, I could take that and walk around this room and give you a pretty usable model within about 5-6 minutes, honestly. So that's a really good one for run and gun type situations as well, or if you need to paint props under desks, whatever surfaces you're trying to capture that maybe aren't as accessible as a device on a tripod. That's a good one for that. And then we have similar sensors to the BLK to go that are all autonomous. So we have a drone one called the BLK to fly. You map out an area on your app and the drone will fly itself, whatever height you dictate. It has clash detection, right? So the type of navigational LiDAR you might see in some cars. So if it's flying towards something and there's an object, it'll detect it and circumnavigate.
It won't
that
crash
object.
your expensive laser.
Yes. Crush. So there's that, and we have another one called the BLK Arc. It's not as applicable for film production, honestly, but I like to talk about it because it's fun. So it's similar to the BLK to go and to fly, only you can actually put it on whatever autonomous machine or robotics you might be working with. So for example, we do have a partnership with Boston Dynamics, and we have the BLK Arc on the Spot Dog. It almost looks like its head, its face. And so yeah, there's
By the way,
areas-
if you've ever seen the Spot robot dog in person, it's actually a little scary at
Freaky.
first. You get freaked out, especially if you've seen Black Mirror. And it stands up right in front of you, and then this thing will go out with the ARC system and go autonomously scan. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, well, and the idea with that one was it's great for areas that maybe aren't as accessible to a person. I can't think of an example off the top of my head.
Well, if there's a leak in the danger,
like a gas main
like
or
a
something,
gas
yeah.
main, they'll send these robots in to sort of do an assessment of the situation.
Yeah, so just different scanners for different needs, but the idea is that they all put out or output a point cloud that can be married to each other. So in what was it? 2-3 weeks ago, I was doing scans of some vehicles, and it was a similar use case to what I was talking about before, where they wanted a photoreal digital replica of each vehicle. So we took the RTC because it gives us the most dense and most accurate point cloud. But it's a slightly larger device. It's, I don't know, about this big, weighs about 35 pounds. So we want to get the interiors of the vehicles as well. And that's when we took out the BLK 360, popped it on the dashboard, and we were able to capture those interior details like the pedals and the seat covers, and then just marry those point clouds together in our software into one model that you can work off of.
So I don't know how you did it, but you answered the question exactly with the show reel. So you guys got to see all the product.
But now I gotta buy a dog. Now I'm really never getting a Porsche.
You're definitely buying a dog.
Any more questions? Oh, we have one more. We have
Right
a couple more here.
here, Olaf.
Oh, hello. You mentioned Gaussian splats, and of course, if you're going to run anything like Gaussian splats, you need photographic image data as well. I mean, if you just have a scanner, that only gives you a point cloud, maybe with a bit of color information. But how do you handle? Do you capture? 2 questions. 3 questions actually. Do you capture a photogrammetry data set as pictures separately? 2, is Leica planning on developing an integrated device?
Yeah,
that
yes, we do capture a photogrammetry set so we'll capture the data with the RTC, and we'll capture a photogrammetry data set. We're using a Fuji GFX 102, so it's a medium format camera, 100 megapixels per shot, and we'll marry that data together.
Okay, and then a question for Leica, are you working on an integrated device? I know that there's some devices out there that combine a LiDAR scanner with photographic image capture. That's really what you want. You want a small handheld unit that you can walk around, takes 360 photos, and a LiDAR point cloud.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing right now that exists.
I think there is actually. I forget now what it's called, but I think there is a device that does that.
I mean, not at the quality you're thinking about.
Maybe not.
I mean, I've tested pretty much everything. I pretty much have a few of the highest resolution cameras
Wow.
that exist, and I'll tell you that it's not.
Hey, Leica makes certainly makes lenses. Seems an obvious case for further product development. And then the third question, my
Yep.
third question was, you were talking about creating this Gaussian splat. What's your pipeline for that? What software do you use to actually, merge the point cloud? And do you develop your own? Have you adapted, any of the publicly available Gaussian splatting software to create your data set from the combined point cloud and your photogrammetry?
Yeah, so we're taking the point cloud. So the point cloud that comes off of the Leica data is extremely dense. It's billions of points. Gaussian splats can't do billions of points, so we resample it. So you take all those points and you say, sample this down. Look at all of your neighboring points and throw away some and create me some new points based on these neighboring points.
Okay,
When
so you're not using any of the photographic imagery directly in that.
Say that again?
You're not using any of the photographic images.
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
So first we have to sample the points. Once the points are sampled, we take that and then the photography and you align the data. So we've aligned it when it's high res. We sample the points, we take the alignment and then the resampled points and we throw those into reality capture, make sure that everything jives so all the cameras are aligned to the point data structure, and then you can export that from reality capture and start training your splat.
Right, but you're exporting essentially a very dense point cloud.
Correct. Yeah, you start with a dense point cloud, sample it down to something that you can train relatively, 30 to 500,000 steps right on, and then export the camera data. So usually you'll take, we'll take it and we'll have to take that camera data and it's 100 megapixels. We'll probably drop it by 4, right? So that you have a data set that you can then train into a really good looking splat.
Okay, but then when you train the splat, you are using the downsampled photographic images.
Yeah, so you're basically telling the splat use this resampled point data.
Right.
So instead of it deriving its own, most people will use Colmap to derive structure from motion, and that's how you'll drive your points. We throw that away and we replace it with the data that we get from the Leica.
Okay, yeah. Might want to sidebar this because this gets very technical. But thank you.
You bet.
Thank you for the lovely questions, Corinne.
Yeah, I think Joey had one question up here as well.
Oh, you've been asking your good question.
Hello. With the generative AI workflow for retexturing, do you have I'm assuming that was image to retexture to Gen AI, like if you want a steampunk diner or a...
It wasn't image to image. So we're using a control net, right? So the control net is using a depth map, and it's also using outlines. So we're generating outlines in a depth map. We're also generating a segmentation that says this is a counter, this is a chair, all in a color map. All those are being fed into a Gen AI model in various different ways using VAE encoders, and we're using Comfy AI basically to generate that.
But we're taking a frame.
Correct.
And retexture. Have you done any workflows where we can have the 3D space retexture but be able to move in and have that consistency? Basically 3D consistency.
Yeah, I know what you're looking for. It's a hard problem. So here's what's interesting about that problem. Once you have a camera viewpoint and you have geometry, right, you now know what that camera coverage is. So what we're experimenting with is taking that camera coverage as a map, figuring out all the other geometry that the camera didn't see, a coverage map, if you will, and then filling in those blanks generatively. So using the still image, figuring out where we didn't see behind this curtain over here, we didn't see up over here. Mm-hmm. So there'll be a disparity map that basically says we didn't see this stuff. But using what we did see, fill in what you think it should be. And that's the next
so
step.
we could get some movement, not the full 3D space, but some movement.
Correct.
I've had some success too with a panoramic export of a scene, and then you can just retexture the whole thing, and at least you can pan the camera a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So, but seeing around the corners of things, that's coming. But you can take that data because you know where the camera is, you know where the data is, you know what the camera saw. So now just call out what the camera didn't see, and let's run some AI on that. That's how that works.
Thanks.
All right, any more? If not, I think we're at time.
Yeah, we are.
Okay,
All right.
perfect.
Round of applause for Corinne, Eric, and Jamie.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.